Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of August 16th through the 22nd. And there's 4 things I want to talk about this week, and culminating on the weekend with a full moon at the critical 29th degree of Aquarius. So that's interesting in and of itself. And also, this is the week that Uranus is standing still and going to go retrograde and join all the other outer planets in retrograde. And we're already seeing a lot of the effects of that, of the Uranus slowing down and stationing. So I'd like to talk about that a little, but a couple other things first. And that is going to start right now on a Monday, and something that really started to go into effect yesterday, and I touched upon a little bit last week, and that was that, if you remember last week, I had talked about how the weekend, which ended yesterday, would probably be one of these weekends where there was a lot of kind of lost or misspent energy if you're really trying to get something solid done, that it was a better weekend to kind of just let go of things. And one of the 3 aspects that I talked about that was, the energy of that kind of energy, setting that kind of energy up, was the sun quincunxing Neptune. So we have that Neptune Pluto sextile going on kind of in the background that I've talked about several times over the last few months, and that being this opportunity to get our ideals into action in a changing world that can help bring transformation about. And maybe somehow through these changes, some of the ideals that we believe in will be injected into what comes out of all this transformation. So the sun quincunxing Neptune, like I said, was a dissipator of energy, really, and that was exact yesterday. And then on Tuesday, tomorrow, the sun is going to quincunx Pluto. So today, Monday, the sun is right on the midpoint of those two, and so we have so that really that the sun is activating that sextile very strongly right now. And it can be a little bit odd because the quincunxes are bumpy energy. There's a lot of there's not much feeling like it's in common when quincunxes are functioning. So it feels like very awkward or bumpy trying to figure out what is what. And with the sun quincunxing Pluto, it can be really interesting because, once again, it brings up really intense energy, and it's mainly inside us. There's psychological kind of change going on, is a good way to say it, inside us. We're really kind of reassessing things and letting things go, but there's a lot of intensity that we go through when we're doing that. And so that can be really confusing to other people, the energy that we're putting out, because it's intense, but it seems to be kind of a little bit misdirected or all over the place, and has a tendency to jump from one thing to another in this kind of obsessive way, but it's really hard for others to follow. So we're all kind of going through this kind of energy together, and a lot of it really is when things are breaking down and changing, it can really trigger fears of letting go of the things that we're used to, we're in control of just of having to let it go of a lot of those things as we're going through that. So that can make us feel really imbalanced at times, I guess is a good way to say it. Just trying to find our way through some new territory, but it's just it's just really intense and new. So like, not only is it confusing for us, but like we're putting that energy out towards others too. And with the Pluto sun, it really is like, it takes on like a really serious attitude about it too. Like it's like, this is like serious stuff. But what's even more interesting to me and what's going on right now is the sun, being on the midpoint of those two, because when the sun is on the midpoint of a Neptune-Pluto aspect, we are very susceptible to outside influence, things invading us on all kinds of levels. So like physically, it's a time when we can be very susceptible to illness, or like things like, getting into our body and throwing our body off. And here we have, like, once again, spikes going on in this COVID virus that's around. It's been around now for a year and a half or so. And so, you can see how that's kind of coincided with that. So this is really saying, we need to be aware and careful that this is a very sensitive time for all of our bodies right now. That, something that can come in and really scramble it up and like make it feel ways that it's never kind of felt before. So it's kind of very strange. And this is not only a physical thing, this could also be happening on other levels within us too, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, that we're open right now to kind of like energies that can come in and influence us for good or not good, so we need to really be aware of this energy that's peaking pretty much right now, early this week, and this susceptibility that we have right now to basically being invaded, like, being almost like poisoned and having to like, or, absorb like strange new feelings in some or all those areas within us. So definitely something where we want to, try to keep our, defense and that kind of thing up, so that and our awareness of outside influence and how it is influencing us, and whether that is actually something positive or negative for us. So also this week, if you remember, Mercury went into Virgo last week. Mars went into Virgo the week before. So Mercury moves faster than Mars and is going to catch up to Mars this week and conjunct one another in Virgo. And that is on Wednesday. And at the same time, they'll be quincunxing Chiron. So this is kind of interesting. When Mercury and Mars get together, it's ornery. There's no question about that. People really attach themselves to their ideas egotistically and can get very, very defensive about it. People really will want to push, what we believe in, and we're going to feel very like tied into that on a personal kind of egotistical level. So, it's very subjective energy. It's not good listening energy. It's more like putting things out rather than receiving things in. So obviously that can create conflict, anger, aggressive type of energy towards other people. And especially when Mercury and Mars are together, that's through words, usually through communications, things like that. Now what's interesting about it in Virgo, probably what's going to trigger it is Virgo can get into that hypercritical mind and get into this really severely judgmental mind. And so like when that's turned upon others and you use that to tear them apart, to hit their weak spots and that thing. Well, what can you expect's going to happen? You're going to get a negative reaction to that, which will create, like, basically a chain reaction of argumentativeness, disputes, playing mental games with one another, basically, a battle. Basically, get yourself into a battle if you fall into the negative part of Mercury conjunct Mars and Virgo. So, and then of course the quincunx of Chiron shows that too, that, that people are going to feel wounded and they're going to feel hurt by the words that others are, pushing at them. And it's going to actually really challenge us to look at our own attitudes about things and ask ourselves whether they need to be redefined or refined in some way. It also, once again, just like the sun on the midpoint of the Neptune-Pluto sextile, Mars with Chiron shows that, our bodies are very susceptible this week. Once again, just like the Mars-Saturn quincunx last week, of physical type of ailments, pain, illness, that kind of thing. So it's interesting. So now, on a positive level, if we can keep this energy positive, the Mercury-Mars is very driven on an intellectual level. And in Virgo can really get into the details of things and really, get push on something, So the thing is with Mercury and Mars is like it can obsess the mind with something that's really important to you. But whether that's actually important to the whole scheme of things and the rest of the world and all that is debatable, because, we have a tendency to really attach to our own stuff and get really subjective with Mercury, Mars. And so the best way to really use that energy is to just, roll up your sleeves and get into the details of the work that you have in front of you. And that really has to do a lot with intellect, although the use of the hands, again, as I've mentioned before, and tools is very a big part of Virgo also. So, a lot of opportunity, to get a lot done on that level. But really, the critical voice should really be, reflecting back to us, and as, there's that old saying, and maybe you need to remember that whenever you're even thinking about criticizing someone this week, that, the three fingers are pointing back towards you. There's the one going out to the person you're criticizing, even if it's internally, and then there's three going back at you. So maybe use that energy for some self-constructive criticism. And so what's really cool, though, is on Thursday, Mars and Mercury, and later in the week, Thursday, Saturday, they trine Uranus. So what that shows is if we can, control this stuff and we can actually make some seriously easy breakthroughs. And so, like, here we go with, Mercury and Uranus together in a harmonious aspect is connecting the intellect with intuition. And so there's this super highway connection of ingenuity that the genius can be brought out in all of us, that instead of the ideas being a city street, they're like an interstate highway, so we have a incredible amount of insight and perceptiveness in what we're seeing and processing through our minds, and a great opportunity to make very stimulating connections that really excite our lives, bring some excitement into our lives by like connecting with others, sharing ideas, finding new information, getting it put into our system, and like recreating something that's very dynamic and can really push ahead, can jump kind of like almost evolution ahead, so to speak. So really like great energy there is the payoff of, that like if we can get down to this work and get into the details, that it'll start to really, get us into a flow where it'll really start to give us a lot of new perception, a lot of new ideas. And then the Mars part is just like, just pushes that energy so much because it really gets us enthused, it gets us like optimistic, and we are just ready to want to, push energy forward. It's interesting too, because with Mars, we'll even do it alone too. Like we don't necessarily have to sit down and wait for someone else to do it. That, we're ready to make changes, to be in a flow, and, and we can get some really good results out of that. Like, there's a lot of ambition flowing, a lot of creative, intellectual energy that is being put, that is being acted upon and really making us move forward. And so we can make some really serious leaps on that energy this week. And okay, and then remember, beginning of the month, I said that one of the biggest things this month, and probably the biggest thing this month, was Uranus slowing down and ultimately going retrograde, which it will do this Thursday. And that whenever Uranus or any of the planets slow down and start to go retrograde, that we can really see acute events in the world that really represent the energy that that planet is representing and the condition it's in. And of course we know Uranus right now is in this square with Saturn all year, the biggest aspect of the year, as I've said so many times, the breaking down of structure and the rapid replacement. So I mean, here I had said earlier in the month, we'll probably see some really big events in the world that will really represent that energy. Well, look at this week. So we have Uranus just about ready to stop and turn around on Thursday. And just in the past few days, the United States pulls out of Afghanistan. And literally, the structure that supposedly was built over 20 years of being in there by the United States is collapses instantly. Uranus, boom. So this structure teaching us a lesson, first of all, that, many times the structure that we think that is so solid and stable is actually not. That, that conditions can rapidly change in our lives. And that, these structures and forms that, in this case, as our example today, for 20 years has been being worked upon, just instantly collapses. And as I've said, when a structure collapses with Saturn Uranus, there's a vacuum that's created, and Uranus comes in very rapidly and fills that vacuum up with something else. Now, whether that something else lasts long or not is actually questionable. It may not last very long. It may be something that is completely chaotic. But a little bit of a lesson here too in astrology is back in 1988 was the beginning of the current Saturn-Uranus cycle that we're in the third quarter square of right now. There was a conjunction of Saturn to Uranus in 1988 in Sagittarius at the 29th degree, and that critical degree again of have you learned your lesson? So what do you think happened in Afghanistan in 1988? Russia, Soviet Union, pulled out of Afghanistan after being there for years and years trying to, quote, stabilize the country, and it fell into complete collapse. 29th degree. Did we learn the lesson? United States, Sagittarius rising country, goes into Afghanistan in 2002, right? Does the same thing for 20 years, tries to stick around and build up a structure and form. Didn't learn the lesson. Third quarter square comes, whole thing collapses. That's example number one. Like I also said, Uranus can also indicate when it's slowing down or in a hard aspect, lots of natural disasters too. Haiti gets hit by a huge earthquake again yesterday, the day before. And then also, there's been some severe earthquakes up in Alaska, volcanoes going off all around the Ring of Fire. So we're seeing some major hurricanes starting to brew up and major wildfires all over, spreading. The biggest one in California, I think, at this point, or the second biggest one. And once again, very interesting, in 1988, when that first conjunction of Saturn and the conjunction that started this current cycle of the Saturn-Uranus started at the 29th degree of Sagittarius, once again, a fire sign. That was the year, if you're old enough to remember this, that Yellowstone National Park got closed down for the first time in history because of the massive wildfires that went through it. So we, once again, see a lot of this connection of this energy of Saturn-Uranus being triggered when one of the planets is going retrograde now that they're in a hard aspect with one another. But some really, really, really interesting. And the thing is to remember too, the last hard aspect was Saturn opposite Uranus. And that was when Barack Obama was elected president. And that was when Saturn was in Virgo and Uranus was in Pisces, right? So like bringing in these new ideas, but what was the reaction to that? What the reaction to that was a split in the country where you had on one side what was called the Occupy movement, which was the left wing, and on the other side, we had the Tea Party movement, which was the right wing. So now, here we are at the square 11 years later, 12 years later, 13 years later or so, and then all of this is really dividing the country again over so many different issues on how to move forward. So it's really, really, really interesting. Incidentally, too, when that conjunction first hit in 1988, that's when the Supreme Court had Kennedy was put on the Supreme Court by Ronald Reagan, and that was the first time the Supreme Court had a 5-4 majority in what they call the conservative way. Also was the time when Palestine declared itself an independent country or state and was recognized by the UN and the rest of the world as being so. So you can see how that, right now, that's another issue in the world that's really blown up during this square, is that, Israel and Palestine and the West Bank situation has really blown up too. So on the same day that Uranus is going retrograde, Thursday is a sun opposite Jupiter, and that is an aspect of excess. And it blows up anything that's going on, whether it's positive or negative. So we can really expect, anything that's associated with the Uranus Pluto square is really going to blow up even more, and just it's a very expansive kind of energy. And on a personal level, it can make us feel very optimistic and just outgoing and growing and feeling like, but it also has a wicked, like, arrogant self-righteousness streak in it, where we can really, want to push our power and feel like we're the ones who are right. So I can get into that kind of like preacher mentality of really pushing that kind of thing. So very interesting watching these cycles, this Saturn Uranus cycle that started way back in 1988, and every time, that we hit, we're in the square, which means it's sensitive all year, and now every time one of these guys gets hit by something, it really activates it, and we really get to see the events. And, and that's going to be going on in our life too. In our individual lives, we'll see an acceleration when these things are happening, of structure falling apart and seemingly like rapid change, which can be at times very chaotic and at other times very exciting, because we know it's going to be bringing in something new. So very interesting how we're seeing this stuff manifest. And, as I said earlier in the month, we could probably expect some big events. So I would expect more for the next week, 2, 3, really, as Uranus is standing still and slowly starting to go retrograde. It's going to be very acute. All right, the last thing, and it's a big thing too, so I'm getting, really want to get on this, is on next weekend, on Sunday, we've got the full moon in Aquarius, and it's at that 29th degree. So 29th degree is a critical degree. Why is it a critical degree? Basically, what it is saying is, have you learned the lessons of this sign of the zodiac in relation to, what's going on? And if you haven't learned if you have learned the lessons, first of all, you're ready to graduate. You're ready to move forward and, see things, so to speak, in a higher octave for that sign, and ready to maybe go work on some other energy and that's related to some other sign. If you haven't, it's kind of like being left back in school, and you have to repeat all the lessons again. So this is like, a pretty critical full moon here in that sense, because it is at this 29th degree of Aquarius. And, the full moon is conjunct Jupiter. That's the only aspect it has. And we're just talking about how Jupiter is in Aquarius at the end of Aquarius too. It's retrograded back into Aquarius a few weeks ago and is going to be conjunct this full moon. So Jupiter will once again bring a lot of expansion to all the energy of this full moon. But fortunately, Jupiter, for the most part, has an optimistic or positive outlook. Now, Moon in Aquarius is really probably the most non-emotional sign that the moon can get into. The moon, is really, it really wants to see like how things are going to like benefit everything, all that's around us, not just the individual. So the sun in Leo is so fixated on the individual at times that it can get really lost in itself, subjectively, egotistically, maybe not be aware of its influence on others. The energy around it can get just, very self-driven, very strong energy like that. But the moon in Aquarius is like, listen, if all this stuff you're putting out isn't like helping everyone or society in general and bringing like some kind of balance, bringing some kind of justice to the equation, then there's conflict. And so that's what the conflict between the opposition of the two is. The sun in Leo has a real big need to express itself and to, show its talents to the world and get recognized for that too on an individual level. And yes, every person has gifts that are important. It doesn't matter how high or low, people judge, or society judges people, they all have a gift to give. So that's when Leo's at this critical 29th degree. It's like, I really need to get this out. There's this strong burning need in individuals to get that out, to get that gift out there and put it out. But the Aquarius moon is very sitting there, very judgmental and stubborn. Both of them are fixed signs, and they're very stubborn. And it's like, listen, you need to prove to me that this has some value that's not just self glory, self gratification, that it's gonna, that your gifts are not just some kind of power trip for you, and that that there's going to be benefits for all, and that we can all work together. So that's what the Aquarius moon wants. It wants to bring this equality, this justice to all, and it wants those individual gifts to prove that that's what their ultimate ends is, that they're wanting. Otherwise, it's gonna be very dismissive and not wanting to be pulled into someone's ego glory journey. So it's very interesting energy. And then, like I said, the conjunction to Jupiter can give us this very positive, optimistic blast, but we have to be really careful, the Leo energy, that just doesn't turn into more ego glory kind of things, and just a really kind of obnoxious aggro kind of energy in a certain kind of way, and just coming off in a tone that's, like I said, once again, very self-righteous. So very interesting. And then what's the ruler of this full moon? Well, it's that Saturn again. The Saturn rules Aquarius and locked into the square with Uranus, who's kind of the co-ruler of Aquarius. So it's all, this full moon is all about what can the individual contribute to this changing world where these structures are falling apart and that new things are coming in. How can you contribute to that? And it's really interesting because Saturn is actually trine the North Node right now, very close during this. So that really gives that chance to get finding groups of people and being able to put structure and form into those associations, and maybe bring out a lot of this Aquarian energy of change and transformation and advancement for ourselves individually and humans collectively. So it's a very, very interesting full moon. But the thing is, it's like I said, it's at that 29th degree. And it's if we don't learn the lessons of this, then we can really fall way back again and have to start all over again in trying to find that right balance between us and the rest of society. And and we may see a lot of our things fail if we don't have that right balance, or we may find a lot of opposition to our ideas, or being called out for the way we're approaching our ideas as being too self-centered, or whatever it may be. But that Aquarius moon is just it wants that cold hard facts. It's cool logic. It's not gonna want to be swayed easily by emotions. So it's very, very, very interesting energy to work with and be aware of. So a lot of shifts going on again in the world, and this is really asking us, have we learned a lot of our lessons through these changes yet? And if we have, are we ready to contribute to this greater change, and therefore graduate to a higher level of literally just what we're even aware of, and how we're functioning and acting and stuff? And if not, we may find ourselves stuck in many different battles that don't make a lot of sense to us, because we're kind of already having to go back and relearn the lessons again, because we really didn't get them the first time. All right. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I do this astrological weather report every week for free on YouTube. And if you don't want to miss it, get a YouTube account. If you don't have one already, become a follower and make sure you turn your notifications on, and then you'll know whenever I do a blog. I'm getting more and more followers, so it's getting harder and harder to social media bomb people and remind them. So if you can do that for yourself, it's great. What you can do for me for the free service is to pass it on to anybody that you know that might be interested in it. And remember, it's on all kinds of podcasts too. Just go to whatever your favorite podcast is, Apple iPodcasts, whatever it may be, Spotify, and just type in Astrological Winds channel and you will find me there. And the other thing you can do is if you need a reading, I've been doing readings for close to 20 years professionally, natal charts, predictive chart work, which is basically a astrological weather report for you personally for the next year, relationship charts, children's charts, elections for when you need the timing, best timing for an event, horary if you have a question you really need answered that can't really seem to get a hold of, relocation, and then someone was asking me about classes again. Like I said, I have 5 classes available right now on Dropbox, $25 a class, $20 if you're a student. And all these services, just email me, matthe823@gmail.com. And we can discuss scheduling, prices, things like that. I'm also available for all kinds of events. And if anyone wants to give a donation, I know some people like to give donations occasionally for the blog. That email, matthe823@gmail.com, is also my Zelle or Venmo account. So no amount is too small if you're feeling like giving a donation, and thank you ahead of time. So I think that just about does it for this week. I've definitely run way over a half hour at this point. So I will see you all next week, and we'll get one more week of August done. And I know we have the intense Pluto-Eris square having its retrograde hit next week, so the continuation of a lot of this intense changing energy will be definitely one of the themes. But really watch this stuff with the Uranus this week. Watch that Mercury Mars and how you're reacting to that. And then the full moon is really like a big moment again. Have you learned your lesson? You ready to move forward? Or are you going to have to do some repeating for a while still? All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. Until next week, we'll see you all.